This is Chargers Now. I am your host, Will Ortner, and today we got to talk about the absolute demon that is being selected potentially by the Los Angeles Chargers at pick 22 because Daniel Jeremiah, NFL insider, believes that he has found a surprise player that could instantly add to this Chargers offense. Who is that player? I'll let you know after you hit that thumbs up button on today's video. We are trying to make this the most liked video in channel history here on Chargers Now. The previous top score was 292 likes on one video. I think that we can absolutely blow by that. So make sure that you come on in and hit that thumbs up button if you love the Chargers, you love our content here on the channel, and you want more Chargers videos. Daniel Jeremiah had the Chargers in his second mock draft, selecting Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from the Oregon Ducks. And just by that picture you can see there, I'm telling you, you got an absolute demon from the University of Oregon. Now, I think there's a lot of Chargers fans who are going to hear this initial news and say, why would the Chargers go after a tight end? We don't need a tight end. We need offensive line help on the interior, defensive line help, or potentially maybe one of the big skill players at that wide receiver or cornerback position could fall to the Chargers. And then, well, more fans in LA would want one of those guys taken instead. It's not like tight end is a dying need for the Chargers right now. When you look at the depth chart for this team in LA, obviously Oronde Gadsden has been absolutely fantastic. Will Dissly is a pro's pro, as well as Tyler Conklin. So, of course, it does make sense that, hey, they might not necessarily need a tight end in LA. But Daniel Jeremiah, he had something really important to say when it came to the Chargers potentially selecting Kenyon Sadiq, and I actually kind of started to agree with him. Sadiq is the perfect weapon for a creative offensive mind like Mike McDaniel, with the tight end joining Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Trey Harris, and Gadsden. The OC would have a lot to work with in his first year with the Chargers. I could not agree more with Daniel Jeremiah because Kenyon Sadiq is one of those athletic freaks. He's the type of player that would fit into this offensive scheme and be very versatile for Mike McDaniel. Of course, we're going to get into the different ways that I believe that Mike McDaniel could use Kenyon Sadiq. But before we get into that, I do want to ask you, should the Chargers draft Kenyon Sadiq, yes or no? Just make sure that you let me know down below in the comment section what your initial lean is on Kenyon Sadiq potentially being an LA Charger. The reason why I think that this might end up actually being a smart pick is because, well, it's threefold. Right now, I believe that Kenyon Sadiq might be the freakiest athlete in this draft. And I think when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, they took the guy with the highest RAS score, Nicky Manwari, and he became an absolute star in that defense. Obviously, it's a little apples to oranges, but Kenyon Sadiq could be that guy. When you look at the last season that he had in Eugene, obviously the yards per catch, they're not going to jump off the page, and the total yards isn't going to jump off the page. But I do think it's important to note that Kenyon Sadiq doesn't really drop the football. He does do a very good job of holding onto the ball, and he gets into the end zone. He's a great red zone target. But it's important to note that he can do things that nobody else can do at that position. He is faster than most tight ends, he is bigger than most tight ends, and he is stronger than most tight ends. I have a joke here with the rest of the employees at Chat Sports, obviously being an avid watcher of the Oregon Ducks, that Kenyon Sadiq about once a game hurdles a player. And I think that you can see through these pictures, by the way, if my memory serves, these are all from this year. Kenyon Sadiq just jumps by everyone. He's so much faster, so much more athletic. This, by the way, is all the way back in high school. That's how crazy of a move that one is. Kenyon Sadiq is just a freak of all freaks. And the older he gets, the stronger he gets, the bigger he gets, the more impressive it is to see him on the field. When you have a player that can be such a freak athlete like him, there are play designs that you can create that no one else can dive into. When you look at Mike McDaniel, hey, guess what? He had a guy similar to this in George Kittle over in San Francisco, and all that guy did was make big-time plays while Mike McDaniel was the OC. I think that Kenyon Sadiq can do the same thing. At the tight end position, unfortunately for a lot of tight ends, but fortunately for some, it is important that you add into the scheme as a good blocker. And I do believe that Kenyon Sadiq is a fairly good blocker and would translate to being a good blocker in the National Football League. Now, it is important to note that Sadiq is a little bit shorter than I think most would love for a tight end, standing around 6'3". But when you look at his run blocking score and his pass pro score, he's a guy that definitely can add into a 6 or 7 man protection in the passing scheme. Has a 76.2% grade there from PFF, so that's pretty dang good when it comes to run blocking. Definitely not afraid to add himself in. You saw Will Stein, the offensive coordinator for the Oregon Ducks, use Sadiq early on in his career a lot as a fullback, and they would motion him in to bring in certain slice blocks or cross blocks to help kind of open up a split zone type of a scheme, or even use him as that second guy in a GH counter because, well, he plays that H position. Kenyon Sadiq will add into this run game as well as the passing game when it comes to him being a blocker because he's simply one of those players that's what he wants to do. He's big, he's physical, and he is strong. Like I said, he might be a little bit undersized, but he knows how to get inside of defensive linemen, linebackers, and safeties depending on who he needs to block. He's also the type of player that has a willingness to block. I've seen him for multiple years now at the University of Oregon just continue to get better and better and better as a blocker. You don't always see that, especially with the new age of tight ends, where it's more about catching the football than it is necessarily about adding into that blocking scheme. When I look at a guy like Kenyon Sadiq, he is the complete package. Now, obviously, he's going to skew a little bit more towards catching the ball at that tight end spot, a little bit closer to a Travis Kelce than you might necessarily look at a traditional tight end. But I'll tell you right now, Kenyon Sadiq can block, and that would be important in any type of Harbaugh offense. Help us catch our Panthers Today channel. We started at relatively the same time, but look at Panthers Today. They are skyrocketing right now. Basically 400 subscribers ahead of us here at Chat Sports. Come on in, hit that sub button. Help us get to 2,000 subscribers. But more importantly, help us catch Panthers Today. We don't want them to get too far ahead of us. The more subscribers that we have here on the channel, the more videos that we will be able to do. So make sure that you hit that sub button. The last thing that we have to talk about when it comes to Kenyon Sadiq, we've talked about his freakish athleticism, how willing and good of a blocker he is. But the most important thing about Kenyon Sadiq is he is versatile. He is the type of player that if they really wanted to in LA, they could line him all the way up on the outside as like an X wide receiver, depending on the formation, of course. They could line him up in the slot. They could line him up on the line of scrimmage. They could line him up in the backfield. They can line Kenyon Sadiq up anywhere. And that's got to be music to Mike McDaniel and his ears. He is a big proponent of players that can play a multitude of positions because Mike McDaniel likes to set up his offense in a way that he can find a matchup that he wants to exploit, and then he just goes after that matchup play after play after play after play. It's why you see Mike McDaniel have an offensive system that leads to a lot of really good running backs because he does a great job of finding different ways to get blockers onto linebackers and safeties and allow guys like a Raheem Mostert, by the way, a really good running back in Mike McDaniel's system, to have some of his best career years. Kenyon Sadiq can add into that, not just in the passing game, but in the running game as well. Because he's such a willing blocker, it might behoove the Chargers to have him at that fullback position from time to time. It might behoove the Chargers to go into a bunch formation in the boundary and have the widest guy be Kenyon Sadiq in that X position, right? So when I look at a guy like Kenyon Sadiq and I look at what he could do in Mike McDaniel's system, I believe that this is just putting him on the path to becoming an all-pro. I understand that some of the production at Oregon kind of faltered a little bit down the stretch, but we all have seen the highlights. We have all seen the film. We have all studied the tape of Kenyon Sadiq. There is a reason why there were a lot of early mock drafts that had him as a potential top 10 pick, because there is no other athlete like him. When the combine comes up or when he has his pro day, whichever one he does the most testing in, you are going to see a lot of Twitter comments, a lot of Twitter replies about how big of a freak that this guy is. Kenyon Sadiq with the Chargers would instantly become a player that was competing to be an all-pro, and more importantly, he'd be getting into a Pro Bowl. He's the type of player that I don't know if he's the final piece to adding this team to being a Super Bowl contender, but he definitely is a much enjoyable and could potentially be a great addition to this Chargers roster. Let me know down below in the comment section if you were the GM of the LA Chargers. Who are you taking at 22nd overall? Let me know. There's a multitude of different picks. Do you want to go with Vega Ione, the kid out of Penn State? Do you want to go with Kenyon Sadiq, or do you want to go with someone completely different? Let me know down below in the comment section. And of course, help us beat our like goal. You love the Chargers. You want the Chargers to be even better next year. You want the Chargers to win a freaking Super Bowl next year in SoFi Stadium at home. The best way to help us out, you hit that thumbs up button. The more content that we get to do, the more watch parties we get to do. But more importantly, it's just fun to think that we got a hand in everything that's going on. So help us out. Hit that thumbs up button. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video, and bolt up.